Welcome to Islamic Advantages. Today we're discussing what Jordan Peterson got right about the concept of true faith as a hierarchy of value that I really wish that Muslim thinkers that he discussed with would have spent more time discussing this with him and explaining it from the Islamic perspective. Jordan Peterson's discussion with Hamza Yusuf, I must say, was one of the best discussions he's had on his channel. And certainly, it's the best discussion he's had with Muslim thinkers. In their discussion, they discuss a lot of really interesting topics like Hamza Yusuf's near death experience, how it helped him find Islam. Um, they also discussed the great alignment between the Abrahamic faiths, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. In the middle of their discussion, though, Jordan Peterson was trying to get at a topic that he's been really, trying to parse out, and he needed help, sort of like thinking it through in some way. So maybe the way he presented it wasn't the most refined, but essentially he was trying to explain his um, understanding of faith as a hierarchy of values. In Jordan Peterson's description of faith, he unfortunately didn't go far enough. And I believe that was a great reason for why the discussion did not pan out in this specific topic. So he was reserved about defining the top of of faith, of the hierarchy of values, as God. The way he defined it is basically, I'm paraphrasing here, as the ineffable perfection, right? And unfortunately, the way that he defined it is it's something that could be easily misunderstood as um, basically our own imagination, and that would certainly not go well with a lot of critics of Hamza Yusuf if he had just accepted it. But beyond that, I think that Hamza Yusuf is himself critical of such a view because of how easily it could be misused, um, and allow for very loose interpretations of faith in a way that could be um, agnostic in some way. So, as a religious man, he was very reserved and was not okay with the definition, and that's just did not allow the discussion to really go through on this specific topic. Otherwise, it was a really great discussion. But I feel it was a very missed opportunity because the Islamic understanding of faith, true faith, that is very similar to how Jordan Peterson defined it. In a hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah, and the hadith scholars consider this hadith to be authentic. Um, in this narration, the Prophet, peace be upon him, explains that faith has 70 and odd some parts. The top of faith is proclaiming there is no God but God. In another way of saying that is there is no deity worthy of worship but God, capital G. And the lower part of faith is removing harmful things from people's way. And humility is one of the aspects of faith. So very clearly, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is using language that says higher, lower, and the middle. The way that this is usually explained is that faith in Islam, true faith, has action associated with it. You can't just say, I believe. You have to believe, but also do action. And the other part of faith, obviously, as we said, is believing in God. as well as other things that we might get into in future episodes. But for the sake of just covering this hadith, the top most priority for us is that we have faith in God, and we emphasize that we only worship God. Another aspect of faith that is shown in this hadith is emotion. So not just believing, not just doing something, but actually having emotions. And humility doesn't do it justice as a translation, but really haya is the right word in Arabic, and it is an emotion associated with humility, associated with wanting to protect what is um, private. Uh, and it's a beautiful feeling, but it's such a surprise to be told, hey, to be a true believer, you have to have a feeling. And hopefully, we'll have a future episode going into feelings and many more as we discover these Islamic teachings. So, for today, I do want to at least cover the lowest aspect of faith for Muslims, and that is the removing of harm from people's way. So to understand this, I do want to look at an example of somebody removing uh, harm from people's way in a religious context, and somebody doing the same action in a non-religious context. So to start with the non-religious context, we have a very good example in the people of Japan. In their tradition, they all come out and clean the road in front of their house on a daily basis. They take a broom and they just sweep up any leaves or anything that they find to clean up the actual street. And it is well known, especially now with the World Cup actually showcasing this, that they clean up after themselves and after other people. So you have Japanese fans cleaning up stadiums after matches, even matches that they themselves were not in attendance of. So it's such an amazing culture, and much respect to the Japanese people. It is something that the rest of the world should try and learn from them on these amazing aspects of their culture. And I think something similar to that, on a much lesser degree, would be in North America, for example, people shovel the snow off of the sidewalk in front of their house. So it's something that it's like, okay, well, I'm not just gonna shovel the driveway. I'm actually gonna shovel the sidewalk where people walk, and this way they don't, pedestrians can easily use the sidewalk. So anyways, in both contexts, you have an example of somebody that is doing something, and they're not doing it for a religious reason. And we should try and understand, okay, so why do Japanese people act so, why do they care so much about cleanliness? And, I think you'll have to sort of imagine with me, okay, so a Japanese person that is born in America, for example, in the United States, they will grow up with a totally different culture. They will grow up with the American culture. So we wouldn't expect a Japanese person born and brought up in a different culture to emulate those things that are in the Japanese culture. So one thing that I do want to highlight is this is clearly a product of the environment. So there might be historical reasons for why the Japanese environment taught people to be clean. Maybe somebody started it somewhere. maybe after the World War II, they sort of had to um, get together and clean up the country after it saw so much devastation and destruction from the war. So maybe that's how it started. Maybe it started even before. So I'm not a historian, but I think the ultimate point that I want to make is that it's a product of the environment. Also, you can't deny that when somebody is doing this, they are potentially uh, thinking that, oh, they got to do it because everybody else is doing it. Or they're doing it because, oh, they want to do it to show it as an example of how much they honor the Japanese culture. Or they do it because they want their street to be clean, and they want others to clean the street with them. And so when they do it, they're hoping that other people will do the same thing. And so ultimately, they'll have a clean street that they can enjoy. But in general, if others stop doing it, then the environment changes and starts influencing the person to just be like the rest. And if the rest of society doesn't clean the street, um, from a non-religious perspective, what's the point? Okay, so let's now focus on the religious perspective. Why is a religious person cleaning the street? Well, if they are doing it with the intention of pleasing God, well, that's the reason they're doing it. They are doing it hoping that God rewards them in the hereafter, in the afterlife, for their good action. They're not expecting any worldly gain from their positive actions. Now, somebody might look at this and say, okay, well, they're both trying to get a benefit out of this. And, sure, uh, it wouldn't make sense for anybody to do something that is not beneficial for them. And it's not something that should be expected of anybody. And, religious people are not somehow angels that are supposed to do things that they're not going to benefit from it at all. They're still human beings. And as human beings, we need something to drive us. We need something to incentivize good behavior. Okay, so back to the religious analogy. Okay, so one, they're not expecting any benefit in this world. Okay, the benefit of that over a cultural mannerism is that a religious person could potentially do this if they are true to their faith. They Once they learn this, they could do this anywhere in the world. They could be in the dirtiest city, and they will still try their best to clean the road. And maybe it's not actually sweeping. Maybe it's removing things that could hurt somebody, make them stumble. Right? If there is roadkill or something, then if they have the time, they go and pick it up and bury it somewhere or something, right? So that sort of thing is really, I would say, the benefit. Uh, so it's not something that we wait for the environment to change. We wait for other people to change, and we change with them. Ideally, the religious person with true faith is not waiting for change. They are the change. Now, sadly, true faith is clearly missing from a lot of people. So, religious people and religious countries are not somehow um, they're not somehow not affected and by the world, and they're all saints now because they pray. No, um, it takes effort, it takes consciousness to work against the environment. It's even harder when the environment is against you. And so uh, people of true faith are not, we don't expect them to be that many in number, but the more people of true faith there are in the society is clearly better by this example. In another hadith, the Prophet peace be upon him says that if you find yourself in the middle of the apocalypse and you have a seedling in your hand that you were going to plant before you saw that the apocalypse was taking place, you should continue with your intended action and you should finish planting that seedling. So that shows the level of faith that Islam teaches, the level of just trusting that God will accept our good actions. And it just focuses on the positives. It's very optimistic. It's like, don't worry about the results. Worry more about what you can do, right? I think this is something that is universal. It is something that is taught, but true faith really delivers this idea home. So I think just coming back to how we started this episode, and that is with Jordan Peterson's description of true faith as a hierarchy of values. I would say that this aligns very strongly with the Islamic perspective of true faith. And I really do hope that Muslim thinkers do appreciate that. I really think that, Jordan Peterson is trying hard to bring faith to people to a society that has basically dismissed faith completely. So he has a very hard task ahead of him, and he's making some waves, I would say, in his journey, and I appreciate that. That he's a positive impact. I don't think that that the mainstream Muslim community is in need of these descriptions from Jordan Peterson because we already have them. Um, but the truth is, a lot of Muslims and like I said, non-Muslims are in need of this messaging because they have not connected with their religious traditions, that are quite rich. So I would say overall, I do find that Jordan Peterson, tries to make a positive impact. He of course does a lot of blunders, especially when he tries to get into politics. Um, but in terms of his life's work, maps of meaning and things related to that, psychology related topics, I feel that he is quite well thought out, and quite helpful in his understanding of things, to the extent where you find him, here's an example of how he was able to reach a conclusion that he might not have read uh, from somewhere else, but he was able to reach that conclusion that very closely matches with something that we have faith is the truth, right? Which is Islam. So it's quite interesting. It's quite amazing to watch, and I do hope that he, you know, continues to make a positive impact on the world. So my final message to you today is: have faith and be the change. Take care.